Well, U.S. President Trump currently addressing world leaders in Switzerland as the tension rises over Trump's continued push to acquire Greenland. Rob Hubert is the director of the Center for Military Security and Strategic Studies. And I guess, Rob, let's just start with this speech. It's obviously still going on, but he was certainly taking a shot at Prime Minister Carney's remarks from yesterday. And it sounds like he has doubled down on taking over Greenland, asking for immediate discussions about it. How consequential are these comments?
They're very consequential because of two reasons. First of all, they continue with this theme that he's developed, starting with the invasion of Venezuela and the seizure of the leader, of the control of the Western Hemisphere. In other words, we see this consistent behavior, both in terms of actions and statements, that this is what he intends to do. So the longer that this goes on, the more it is becoming apparent that it's not just simply sort of, one of these random thoughts that he's so famous for. And the other consequential is, of course, it's us. We're sitting here and, as everybody saw the story in the Globe and Mail yesterday, where our military is actually now planning on how to respond to an American invasion. I mean, that's how serious it's gotten. So both in terms of intent and the fact that it's remaining, is a very critical reality we now face.
Can we just talk about the last few days? The sort of statecraft seems to have completely disappeared. Not that it was ever that present with President Trump, but, sharing maps with U.S. flags over Canada and Greenland, revealing private messages from world leaders, talking about these tariffs on countries that don't support his Greenland ambitions. I'm just wondering if we take a bit of a sort of a wider picture, what kind of damage has been done to global security in the past few days?
Well, it's being completely transformed in what's happening. I mean, part of the difficulty we face in Canada is other countries have been facing these type of challenges for a very long time. You look at Ukraine, you look at Taiwan, you look at these other countries that live in danger zones. I think what has really changed for us is we simply in Canada never thought that we were going to be the ones that were in the middle of any of these danger zones. We always ultimately counted on the U.S. to remain being a stable country and a country that ultimately was a friend of Canada. And what Trump has done is he's basically upended it, and all of a sudden the geopolitics of all these other regions now are a reality for Canada, and that's what we're adjusting to right now, and it's a chilling thought.
The Prime Minister seems to be well aware of that, given his speech yesterday. What were your biggest takeaways from what we heard from Prime Minister Carney yesterday?
Well, the first takeaway, of course, is this complete reversal of where we've been for the last 10 or so years, where, of course, everything was about values and sort of with the embedded idea that somehow we were a little bit better than everybody else. And instead, what we saw from the speech is a return to a basic understanding of realpolitik, where Carney put front and center that we can pretend that there were institutions that were out there to look after us. And that's, of course, a debatable point. But the reality is now that to a large degree, we're on our own and we have to figure out how to get around what we used to think was a rule-based system into one that now is starkly determined by power. And Canada does not have very much power. And so I think that's the major sort of acknowledgement that comes out of that statement or the speech.
And so what's the way forward, Rob? You've been studying this for decades. How do we move forward?
Well, hopefully there will be actions behind what Carney says. Canada's political leaders are very good at making statements. I mean, if you look back to the statements when strong, secure, and engaged, our defense policy, it was saying we're getting back into real politics, but nothing happened really after it. So I think, of course, the environment is very different from 2017 and now, and we have to see in terms of how Carney is going to navigate it. I mean, we got a little bit of a hint with Carney going back to China and resuming relations with them. There's the discussions about warming relations with India. So I think that we're going to be seeing a very economic-based foreign policy where Canada is trying to establish alternatives to American markets. The security part is a part that's going to be probably front and center, just depending on if Trump is serious about invading Greenland and at what time that happens. And if he does invade Greenland, there's an increasing possibility that he also then accelerates his movement to control elements of Canada.
Right, and probably NATO, obviously, down the toilet with all that. Rob, thanks so much for your time and your insight as always. We'll go back and catch up on the rest of this speech. That is Rob Hubert, the director of the Center for Military Security and Strategic Studies.